Our next panelists are part of the next generation of agriculture who will be sharing the excitement, opportunities, and challenges that await them in the industry. I'm honored to introduce our next moderator for this panel is Governor Kristi Noem. Governor Noem was elected in November of 2018 as the 33rd governor of the state of South Dakota. The governor is a wife, a mother, and a lifelong rancher, farmer, and small business owner. She was born and raised in rural Hamlin County in northeastern South Dakota. After a family tragedy, Governor Noem took over the family's farm and ranch, stabilizing the operation and providing leadership when it was needed most. As an avid hunter, she later started a hunting lodge as well. In 2006, Governor Noem was elected as the 6th district representative to the South Dakota House of Representatives. In 2010, the governor's commitment to common sense values earned her the opportunity to serve as South Dakota's lone member of the U.S. House of Representatives. During her time in Congress, she helped to pass a farm bill which included strong livestock disaster and crop insurance programs. Governor Noem and her husband Brian have 3 children, Cassidy, Kennedy, and Booker. Please join me in welcoming Governor Noem and our panelists to the stage. Thank you very much.
So where do you want me to sit? Am I in the middle? Okay, we'll do that. Good morning. We can all be seated. Let's sit down and relax. These guys are a little bit nervous. You're nothing to be scared of, are you? No, this is going to be a good opportunity for us. I appreciate all of you being here for the Ag Summit. I'm Kristi Noem. I'm your brand new governor, only about 6-7 months in. People ask me quite consistently, how is it going? And I say, I don't know, you tell me. We're working hard to make sure that South Dakota is getting through a tough spring and tough summer, and the ag industry is growing all the time in South Dakota and doing well, but we do have producers struggling. So I think during a time period like that, it's even more important that we get together and we talk about ways that we can meet challenges, do it together, and be even stronger coming out of it at the end of the day. So I think you all know my background. I grew up on a farm and ranch in northeastern South Dakota. Did that my whole life, went to college, and when my dad was killed in an accident, came home and became general manager of the operation. So we went through some tragedies, and that's really what got me interested in government and politics, was when our family went through something hard. And I couldn't believe we had federal policies and laws that made, when a tragedy happened to your family, you got hit with even more financial burden at the time. So that's really what brought me to the table in showing up for meetings, weighing in on policy, and getting involved in government, and recognizing we needed more producers, more business owners, giving insight into what kind of policy we have and how our world works, giving that kind of insight, not just on the work, but also on the policy side of it. There's no other industry that I know of that is more impacted by federal policy than agriculture. Really, our whole future is tied to that and decisions that get made, so it's incredibly important that we show up. So I want to thank you for showing up. I also have a lieutenant governor who's a rancher. He was here yesterday. I hope some of you got the chance to visit with him. But we know that we're the first farmer and rancher pair to lead a state, we think, in the nation ever. So I think that's a testimony to how we feel about agriculture in South Dakota, and I expect us to lead the nation. I expect us, everything we do, to be an example of how we can do things in this country. So for that, I want to move on to have our panelists. We are very blessed to have 4 panelists here that are young leaders, and they're going to give us some insight into what it's like to be involved in agriculture and talk about some of the challenges that they've faced. But first, I want to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. So we will start with Logan. Logan, you want to introduce yourselves to everybody?
Yeah, so my name is Logan Wolter, and I'm from Wessington Springs, South Dakota, central South Dakota. I am a second-year ag business student at Mitchell Tech, and I grew up on my family's ranch, lived and worked on there my whole life, and kind of similar situation to you, Kristi. When I was real young, my father passed away due to cancer, so it kind of forced me and all my siblings to step up and help take over the ranch and keep it going throughout the years. So we know about them tough times and throughout agriculture and everything that goes on.
So how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 other siblings. One's a junior, going to be a senior, and then 2 sophomores.
So they're all younger than you?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
the oldest.
Okay, so you have recently come home after completing your education now, and
No,
you're
I have 1 year left.
1 year left. Okay,
Yep.
and then you plan to come back to the operation?
Yep, that's the plan anyways.
Wonderful, good. Taylor, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, hello, my name is Taylor McMartin. I am the current treasurer for the South Dakota 4-H Ambassador Program, and my tie to agriculture is that I have been involved with 4-H and FFA, and I raise Targhee breeding sheep, which is a wool breed. And my future plan, since I recently just graduated high school, is to attend South Dakota State University to major in agriculture communications.
Perfect. Is President Dunn still here? He's got one more coming. So that's exciting news. Good. Thanks for being here, Taylor. And I am a huge fan of 4-H. Any of you go through 4-H when you were younger? As soon as I got out of 4-H, I became a leader. So then I was a 4-H leader for probably 17, 18 years. I had a couple years into serving in Congress. I had to give that up. I didn't have enough time anymore. But thank you for being an ambassador for 4-H. I think it's a wonderful program for our students. Calli, let's skip and go to you.
My name is Calli Williams. I'm originally from Aurora. I now reside north of Mitchell with my husband Tate and our extremely busy and on-the-go 1-year-old son Jack. We are considered millennial ranchers. We operate a purebred Angus cow-calf operation called TW Angus. We're considered millennial ranchers because we are on our own ground. We purchased our own cattle, so we've made an incredible financial investment into what we are doing.
I love it. John.
I'm John Eilertson. I've grown up by Wentworth, South Dakota on our small family farm raising crops and livestock, and I currently will be a senior at South Dakota State University. Go Jacks. I'm majoring in animal science with the industry specialization, and I'm on the 2019 SDSU Livestock judging team, growing up in 4-H and FFA, and look forward to being involved in agriculture in the future.
That's great. Thank you, John. Calli, let's go back to you because I want to ask you a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced with purchasing and taking on the kind of debt that you had to, obviously, putting in an operation, purchasing cattle. Tell me some of the biggest challenges you've faced so far.
So the first obstacle actually wasn't as big of an obstacle as it could have been, was purchasing our place. We were able to find ground in a home, and it was actually one of my husband's family friends who had a swine farrowing operation and was ready to move to town. So we were very fortunate to be able to have the opportunity to purchase a place directly from him. If we wouldn't have been able to do that, I don't know that we would be able to live where our cattle are. So that was one obstacle that we were fortunate was easier than we thought it would be. Another obstacle would be the finances behind it, just making sure that we have the proper equipment, the proper facilities. The feed bill comes every month, whether you want it to or not. And things like we faced this year of Mother Nature, we found out mud was expensive. We purchased more curl panels than we thought we ever would. So just the finances, finding the land, and another challenge that we have had as millennial ranchers is how do you get your name?
Let me ask you a follow-up question to that, just because you... Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do about it, though. We'll just kind of act like it's normal. How's that sound? Well, hopefully they can get it fixed. But I want to know how you met the individual. It was a family friend, so that's how you, because that's one of the things South Dakota's been wondering is if we need to have some type of a program to help people transition operations. Those who want to retire, those that are involved in agriculture and want to pass it on to the next generation, how we can help facilitate that kind of a connection. So you did it through a family friend, and how did that conversation start?
So I have to give all of the credit to my husband. It was his family friend. It turned into Tate was just the kid that came and had the muscles to move snow so he could get to town. And he expressed how eager he was to have a place for his cattle to live. He was keeping his cattle with a family friend, and so just knowing that he could possibly transition into this place and have his cattle in one location was going to be easier for handling the livestock. He could have a better grasp on them and their nutrition and calving season and everything like that. So our friend Charlie moving to town was the biggest blessing that we had.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of those things that if we can facilitate those kind of conversations and connections, I think it's incredibly important. John, tell me a little bit about some of the challenges of being involved in an operation that you've seen along the way.
I think one of the biggest challenges is like Calli over here, startup and being able to find a way into the operation and being able to make it work for what your goals are and what you have in mind. And that's one thing. Earning capital to get involved in the agriculture industry is really hard if you don't have a mentor or someone that's willing to work with you. And being able to just open up that door, I think there would be a great opportunity to have mentor programs within South Dakota with retiring farmers across the state that maybe don't know young people that want to get involved in agriculture, because I have a feeling there's quite a few of us out there. And I've had the opportunity with taking over some of the operation from my dad with purchasing land and stuff. So, but if I didn't have that opportunity, many young agriculturalists would be up for a challenge.
So tell me a little bit, any of you, I've had young producers come up to me and say, I go into the FSA office to get a loan, and it's a beginning farmer loan, but then they want me to show them 3 years of tax returns, or they want me to prove to them that I'm a good investment, and how do, it's like, how do I get that experience unless somebody takes a chance on me? Has that been an issue with any of you on financing?
Well, I actually have an FSA beginning farmer loan to purchase the land from my father, but it all started out with I took an FSA youth loan when I was younger in 2012, and that way I had agriculture production. I was involved in agriculture then, and they were very willing to give youth loans out, and that's the only way that they were able to have any tax records that I was involved in agriculture and willing to give me a loan.
Okay, so that was enough of a background that they had the faith in you then to give you that beginning farmer. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Logan, how about you? Have there been some challenges along the way in your operation as far as people believing in a young producer, a young adult who comes in and is asking to do business or doing running the operation?
As far as that goes, so we raise seed stock. We have a registered yearling bull sale every year and things like that. And I've actually been fortunate enough with the few cows that I own myself on our operation that I've been able to raise some of our high selling bulls consistently every year. And I have to credit that to my parents for allowing me that opportunity. And I think for young people, the biggest thing is if you show up and you prove that you're willing to work hard and you show that you have a passion for what you're doing and show that you have that work ethic, that people recognize that and they can see that and they're willing to take a little bit more of a chance on you. But it's still hard to find the opportunities to acquire land, whether that's rent or to rent land or buy land. And there's plenty of opportunities to actually do that. It's just being able to do it in a price range that pencils out.
Right.
Because, you can rent grass, let's say, for X amount of dollars, but if it don't pencil out, you're going to lose everything. So that's the biggest struggle, just trying to be young and come in and make it work on paper, I guess, is the hardest thing. Not even so much finding the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Taylor, tell me a little bit about, you've been active in the 4-H program, but what do you think people in South Dakota that a 4-H ambassador has the best opportunity to fill in the gaps on, that people in South Dakota even are losing touch on with agriculture producers? Is there places that you've seen, you've had the chance to help educate people on really what agriculture and modern agriculture is like?
Yes, completely. Oh, sorry. The younger generations don't really know. It's just there's a statistic out there that says that only 1 in 5 children, elementary age children, know where their food comes from. And so being an ambassador for the state of South Dakota for 4-H, I've been privileged enough to go and talk with those younger generations, like elementary school age children, to tell them where their food comes from and why agriculture is so important to all of us around. So being a young adult representing the state of South Dakota has given me opportunities to show the younger generations what the biggest impact that agriculture has on all of us.
I'm going to give you all the chance to ask a question too. So be thinking if you have a question for anyone up here or for all of them if you'd like to. But I'd like each of you to mention who inspires you in your life. Who do you watch to exemplify in your daily life in agriculture? Do you want to start, Calli?
I am unable to list just one person. Growing up, I was very fortunate to be around what I still consider some of the best cattlemen in our state. Going to West River, going to Brandings, and being around true cowboys. I have so many memories from going out and doing that, and just how optimistic, hardworking, and overall how humble they are. It's a great representative of who is representing our beef industry. Between my parents, everything I learned at home from them that I've been able to take to our operation, and then also the ranchers that my husband was involved with and the things he learned from their place that we have been able to combine everything we've learned and put that into TW Angus.
Good. John, do you want
Similar to Calli, again, I guess there's very many people that have been an inspiration to me and inspire me every day to continue pursuing agriculture as a future career and being involved in agriculture. Most importantly, like everyone, mostly, it's my mom and dad. They growing up on a farm that's been family run, and it's the opportunities that you're given and the hard work that you're learned from a young age, and they inspire you that you want to be involved in agriculture, and then hopefully that your future children be involved in agriculture, and that's the whole mentality there. But there's also so many more mentors within the swine industry that I've looked up to, as far as people that are involved in organizations and people who are just fellow breeders, and there's just so many to list.
Perfect. Taylor?
Okay, I have a similar to the rest of them. I'm not what you would consider a traditional agriculturist. I live in the city, and I raise my turkey breeding sheep outside on a small farm just south of town. So my biggest inspiration is my mom. I grew up without a dad. It was just me, my mom, and my sister. Okay, I'm gonna get emotional. But it was just me, my mom, and my sister. And my mom every day inspires me to be the bigger person and to do better with everything or agriculture. She's my biggest inspiration.
That's great.
Yes, same deal, similar to everyone else, but it was my parents, and I think probably my biggest inspiration was my father when I was young. Some of the best memories I have of him was riding in a tractor, feeding cattle, cutting hay. The amount of acres that I covered as a little kid just riding along in the back window of our 1896. And just, at the time I didn't realize it, but he was teaching me and all my siblings on how to live, and it was instilling in all of us the passion for agriculture, as long with the work ethic that you need to have to stay in it. He was teaching all of us that just by having us watch him live. And then my mom and my stepdad and everyone else that's helped me along the way, from my FFA advisor and high school teachers and things like that. And around Wessington Springs there, that's pretty big cattle country for, I guess you could consider, east of the river. And, you know, just growing up, helping people work cattle, going to brandings, and meeting all them family friends that, you know, and neighbors that you just learn that if a neighbor needs your help, you help them, and they do the same thing. And so all them people I look up to, and I know I can always ask them for help, and they know they can always ask me for help in times of need to. So.
Do you have something your dad said to you all the time that still runs through your head? Like most of our memories, if you grew up on a farm and ranch, are family memories, working together, doing chores on the farm or something. Is there something that you said really the way to live your life you learned from your dad? Was it from watching him? Was it things that he said while you were working? Is there What piece of wisdom, and I'm going to come to each of you, what piece of wisdom throughout your life did somebody say to you that really changed the way that you thought about what you wanted out of life?
I'd say, so I don't really ever remember him like saying much, like exactly when it comes to that, because I was
It
pretty
sounds
young.
like, yeah, how old
But
were you when he passed away?
I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
But he, just by watching him, the passion he had for agriculture, the passion he had for the crops and livestock he was raising and the land that we were operating at the time, just really instilled all that into me. And like my grandparents at the time, they raised dairy cattle and they milked dairy cows and stuff. And he'd take on all them, I remember he'd take on all them bottle calves, those dairy bottle calves, not because he wanted the extra chore, but it gave us kids something to do. And just made sure we got outside and, you know, taught us how to do that kind of stuff. And my whole life, just between my step-parents and everyone else, you know, just teaching you to work hard. And if you have a passion for what you're doing, they say you don't work a day in your life, and I think that's completely true. And just, if you work hard and put your time in, people are going to recognize it and good things are going to come. And that's my biggest, I get. Words of wisdom is just, if you just, yeah, like I said, keep working hard, people are going to recognize it, so.
John, what about you?
I think I was going to touch on Logan's there, just with your something you're passionate about. You never work a day in your life, and that's very true. And whenever I'm on the farm, I feel like I'm not even working, even though I think I am with all the sweat. But I also think it's really important that something I was told long ago is treat them right and they'll treat you right. And I think it's important to make sure that not just your other neighbors and farmers, but families who are consumers, treat them right. You don't have to degrade them because of their opinions, but you need to respect them, and you need to be able to offer your opinion in a humble way. And I think that's just something that's stuck with me, is treat them right and they'll treat you right.
Calli, words of wisdom?
I don't know that I have a specific phrase necessarily, but everyone in here that's been around livestock and you're working them together as a family, you probably have a few pop into your head. There are always so many lessons learned when you're out working with cattle, and one thing that was very important to our family was the animal handling. And so I have a strong passion for that. Anytime we're working our own livestock or at someone else's operation, just the low stress animal handling is something that is in my mind of how would Dad have done this? Where would he have stood? Would he have yelled at where my arm was, or something along those lines? And then another saying that always sticks with me is, if you take care of the land and the livestock, they'll take care of you.
Very good. Taylor, is there words of wisdom that kind of formed the person that you are, got you interested in 4-H and agriculture?
Yeah, so my mom is like the biggest inspiration to me, and she told me once when I was little, if you have the opportunity to take it, because you never know when you're going to see that opportunity again. So I've been kind of living my life like that, is just like, if I see an opportunity like sitting on this panel, that I'm going to take it. So that's how I've been living my life the past 18 years, is just if I see an opportunity to take it.
That's great advice. Okay, technology, which I'm incredibly challenged in. I'm engaged in all kinds of technology. I just don't have an affinity for it. And I think that one of the things that young producers have to their advantage is that you've grown up in a world where technology is just permeated through all of it. So tell me about an innovative way that you're using technology in your operation that you think all of us could learn from, or what you're most excited about in technology that's coming. John, do you want to start?
One of the most innovative ways that I am personally involved in the operation is with online, well, not online, but tracking medication and stuff through an app on your phone, and being able to just put it into your app, because that way you put something in your phone, it's there forever, hopefully. I mean, that way you don't lose it, and it's so much slicker just to transition that. And then that's with every species, or everything in agriculture. You have a thing at your fingertips that can store information that you might not be able to remember. And I think moving forward, that's going to be one of the most influential things to making sure that we're on track of keeping records, and that way we're on top of the game for consumers as well. So especially in the livestock industry, knowing exactly when you gave an animal a medication for their well-being, and making sure that consumers know that you're well aware of what's going into your animals.
Is there a website or an app that you're the most excited about that really makes your life a lot easier?
Not a specific one,
Not
I
a
guess.
specific one? Okay. Calli?
In the beef industry, the technology that I see and that we use every day is behind the EPDs. And so knowing the genetic value behind what you are using, whether you are looking for calving ease, and that's what you're focused on, is making your calving season a little bit easier, or if you are someone who backgrounds cattle and you're focused on the carcass traits, using the proper genetics to get your cattle where you want them to be so that overall we have the wholesome product for our consumers.
Is there some type of technology that you couldn't live without on your operation? Is there something that you use every day, an app or a website or?
Not an app or a website. I gotta say, I still love my old feed scale.
Yeah,
And being
good.
precise.
Yeah. Logan, how about you?
So kind of the same way with Calli, since we raise seed stock and Simmental and Sim Angus cattle, and then we background our own calves and things like that. Being able to, whether it's go online or look in the catalogs or whatever it may be, and see exactly what that bull or cow or whatever it may be at the time is going to produce, and make sure you pair that animal up with an animal that's going to complement it to raise the most efficient livestock there is that you can produce, to come easy, to make calving season better, but yet finish good in the feed yards, and ultimately just pack pounds on quicker, because the faster they can, the faster you turn around, the more sustainable it can be. And then, so we don't farm a lot of ground, we just enough, to put up a silage pile and put some corn in the bin to feed our cattle. And so we hire most of our farming done. But even with just that, like the technologies and the precision agriculture there, being able to put seed and your chemical and fertilizer exactly where it needs to be to optimize the yields on your ground, and not only maximize the potential of that, but to also increase your soil health and things of that nature. All of that ties in together, I believe, can help make farmers and ranchers across the nation more profitable and help us stay sustainable for years to come.
Taylor, you're going into ag communications, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got to be an expert at technology then. Are you on social media? Are you educating people through all platforms? What are you the most excited about?
As you mentioned, I am interested in going to ag communications. So my technology that I'm most excited for is seeing what social media can offer us young producers. Because in the news lately, there's a bunch of bad agriculture news. It's not real, coming from the aspect of all of us producers, that we know the truth and people just don't understand that. So what I strive to do, or what I'm going to strive to do, is to get the good of what agriculture provides for us all out on my social media platforms, to spread the goodness of agriculture and what the opportunities that it will offer us all.
Anybody have any questions out here? Yes, sir. Jerry. So Jerry asked, what simple thing could family, friends, industry leaders do today that would help you as new producers to be successful? What is one simple thing that they could do today that would help you be successful in your operation? Calli's dying to talk, I can tell.
I don't know, but I was thinking. We've been very fortunate, and so it's not something that our neighbors don't necessarily know, but they are willing to lend us equipment when we need it. Before the snowstorms came in this spring, they knew we don't have a tractor yet. We are operating with a skid steer, and that can only do so much with what Mother Nature threw at us. And so our neighbor reached out to us and offered to lend us one tractor so that we could properly move snow, create shelters for calving cows, and get hay everywhere we needed it. We have other neighbors who understand we will be ripping out fences and replacing it, and they have been more than eager to assist us and with equipment, with sweat, anything. So just being open to that conversation, that even though we're an independent group being farmers and ranchers, we do like to help and work together.
John?
I think our family, friends, and the people in the audience can greatly benefit us by being supportive and being able to make the connections for us that we need to be able to start up or expand our operations, and just getting a foot inside the door from people who know people. And I think that was something that would really benefit all of us as young people who want to get involved in agriculture, who are looking to get involved in agriculture in the future. And if you're willing to open up that connection for us, I think we can go great places.
I remember when my dad passed away, starting the very next morning, we had a neighbor who was a large farmer that came every single morning just to see what we needed. He just drove in the yard. You know, you don't really know what you need until you get up that morning, but every day for a year, he drove over in the yard, and if a tractor was broke down, he sent a tractor over. If we needed an extra hired man, he sent us a hired man. But sometimes you don't want to go out and ask for those things, and that's something that we can do as older farmers and producers, is when we know there's a young producer out there getting started, just go show up in their yard and see what they need. Taylor, what advice do you think?
Well, these guys took the words right out of my mouth. So there's nothing really more that you can add to it. It's just like you have to be open to understand that we are going to be scared to ask for help, and that if we are not asking for help, just to like be around and support. Just having that support system that we all as young producers can rely on to help us in our greatest times of need is what we really need, is just to have some people to support us.
Logan?
Well, I guess they didn't really leave me a lot there, but I just have to agree with all of them that, you know, I'm willing to help whoever, neighbors, not neighbors, family, friends, whatever. If someone needs help, I'm there to help them and whatever. And I'm sure these guys are all the same way. And if my time's of need, whatever it may be, if they're willing to help me, that's great. And I think that goes for the same way with anyone coming into agriculture. I mean, I don't know hardly any young person that grew up in ag that doesn't know how to work and doesn't value a helping hand every now and again, and is willing to help that person out too. And that was one of the biggest things when I was growing up. We had a neighbor that lived right down the road that is super smart mechanically and stuff, and his father was getting older too and couldn't operate machinery anymore, and so he was kind of on his own. So we would trade out, we'd do all of his haying for him and stuff like that. He had a 3-row silage chopper that he would provide for like us chopping silage, and he had dump wagons and trucks and things like that. And then also in return, he fixed all of our equipment, and I guess I couldn't tell you the amount of money that he'd probably saved our operation just in fixing stuff and not having to take it into the implement. And it's just simple things like that, just being for one another. Help goes a long ways. You don't realize it at the time, but it really does. And I guess that's the biggest thing. Just give us a chance, and we're willing to help you if you're willing to help us. And like I said, none of us are looking for handouts or anything like that. We're willing to work and earn what we get or whatever. So I guess that's the biggest thing.
Other questions from the audience? Comments? So I'm going to ask you something, because sometimes we wonder why people your age aren't going into farming, why you're not getting involved. We know that the financial side is tough. We know that, but sometimes people wonder if more people your age want to work that hard anymore. Do you think that there is that kind of an approach that agriculture looks too hard? And then how do we change that perception and show it as an opportunity rather than something that is too difficult to get into? And I would say most of the people that are involved in agriculture have struggled to get help. You know, they've wanted to hire people to work and help on their operations, and they've struggled to get that help there. So they wonder if even this generation wants to be farmers anymore. Do you see that, or do you have a way that we could approach it differently?
I definitely see that. If it were up to my husband and I, we would have a lot more land and a lot more cows, and we would ride horseback through them every day. But health insurance is one thing that we think about, and so we both have full-time jobs in order to have our benefits. We have full-time jobs in order to afford the lifestyle that we are living and want to continue living. As we mentioned earlier, FSA is very eager to help beginning ranchers, but something that Tate and I have talked about is maybe there should be something for the people who made it 5 years or 10 years, and so there's a way to maintain that younger generation in the agricultural industry to keep us being eager. We're all eager and willing to work in our younger years, no matter how somebody from the outside sees it, but we also need to be supported throughout the journey.
Growing up, I guess, there was always, came from a very small school. Like, I graduated with 7 kids in my class, but I was one of the very few that had like livestock back at home, and I'd always tell my dad, I think I'm the only one that comes home from school, goes and puts on my chore clothes and goes outside, and everyone else goes and plays video games. I think it's all about how you're raised, and if I was 1 out of the 7, that's just amazing how many are in bigger schools. Like, that's just detrimental to how there's not enough of us that are willing to work hard, because we were probably willing to work hard because we were raised working hard. We knew what it's like to work hard. We knew the rewards of working hard, and being able to conquer that and continue to hard for yourself, but then also work hard for someone else is even more important, because not everyone, I know many people who will just go to a job and just be there. They won't really care. But I feel like, and same on farms, people who hire laborers on farms, they probably are people who don't always work hard. There are plenty that do, but there's not enough of us that work hard. So the opportunity, you need to find the right people that work hard, because there's people out there that work hard, and then when you find the people that work hard, you should probably reward them.
I guess, I know, so like I said earlier, I have 3 younger siblings, and each one of us are different in our own way. I mean, we all still work on my family's ranch. I work there just part-time now because from my internship with school or whatever, and I decided to stay on through the summer. But anyway, I know, like, my brother, who's going to be a senior now, he's big into sports, you know, high school quarterback type, and kind of pretty boy, but he he took over. He stepped up big this summer and kind of took over my spot, because for the last, I don't know how many years, I've been the one to pretty much cut every acre of hay on our farm, and just that was kind of my deal. I stuck to the haying and made sure that was getting done. He stepped up big, taking that over, and my younger brother, Caden, who's going to be a sophomore, I think he's been out spraying thistles all this week, so.
He's not the pretty boy?
He likes his video games.
Okay.
So getting him out of the house is one thing, but once you get him outside, he likes it. And my sister, she's actually working pretty much almost full-time at 15 for another local producer around there, since his hired man left him or something happened there, but she stepped up and went to work for him, and he loves her there. She knows what she's doing around cattle. She showed cattle her whole life and lived in a barn, and so she's out there moving whole herds of cattle all by herself and things like that. And I think it's just so much of how you're raised. Like, if you come from a family who just kind of let you skimp by on chores or things like that, you know, you might not, you know, have the same work ethic as someone who's come out there, been out there every day of their life. And it also comes from passion. If you don't have a passion for agriculture, if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, you're not going to put your full time and effort into it. You're going to slack off here or there. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just trying to find someone that has a passion for what you want them to do. And I think if you can find that, then you'll be amazed on how hard they'll work for you.
Taylor, do you feel like 4-H is a good way to expose students to the opportunities that agriculture provides? I mean, living in town, and was that your exposure to agriculture and how you learned about it? Or tell us a little bit about how we could use, because a lot of kids aren't growing up on farms today in South Dakota. They're growing up in town, and they But if we have FFA, 4-H, other opportunities for them to get exposed to it and find that they might enjoy it, what's your experience?
That's how I got involved with agriculture, is when I joined FFA my freshman year of high school. That summer I leased market lambs to show. And I've been I did 2 years of market lambs, and then the spring of my sophomore year, I finally decided to go out and purchase my target ewes. So that was my first exposure to agriculture, was just purchasing my ewes. Because with leasing, it's just like I showed up, I fed them, and I left. I worked with them maybe 5 minutes, and then I left. But when I finally bought my ewes, and I realized just oh, I've got a lot to get done in a few short months before fair. And I'm just I had to learn that work ethic of living on the farm just basically overnight, because it was hard. And it's just growing up, not being surrounded by agriculture, it was hard. It's just you're not used to these things. It's just when my first show lamb died, I literally just sat there and cried. Mm-hmm. It's just you're not used to that thing when you're not raised with agriculture. So that was my first exposure, was joining FFA and being in 4-H.
And that might be something the industry could go after, is going to your school districts and asking them to start FFA programs. I went to a small rural school, consolidated school, 4 towns, school in the middle of nowhere, no FFA program. And it would have been a school you would think would have had one. And so I would, if the industry leaders could advocate for that program at their school districts so that kids have the chance to participate in some of these programs and learn the finances and the projects and working with animals, and maybe help sponsor an FFA teacher or something like that, that might be a huge way for us to be able to educate, the next generation of agriculture producers on the opportunities that are out there. Were you all in FFA? Mm-hmm. You all were. Oh, there you go, rock stars. And look, you're all up here teaching us today because of that leadership opportunity. Other questions from the crowd? Comments? Okay, so these guys need a list of what they need to do to help you be successful, and so that you can be an example of agriculture to the nation. So they need to know what they can walk out of here today knowing they need to focus on, whether it's ways to connect you with mentors, ways to connect you to finances, ways that they can help you get more help, technology. What is it that these industry leaders, education leaders, other producers can do that will help you be more successful?
I guess there's a few things that you can think about with that. What we touched on earlier of lending a hand or the piece of equipment, or even the FSA type of loans that are available for us, but also how to get our name out there. As I said earlier, being millennial ranchers, my husband and I sell bulls every spring via private treaty. But how do we say, come look at TW Angus bulls? We aren't 4th and 5th generation or 20th year family production sales. Someday we would like to be at that level, and maybe our son will be the first one who gets to have a production sale. But just advice on the best way to advertise what we have and to help tell our story. We utilize social media as much as possible, but maybe that's not the right outlet that we're using. We put the ads in the green sheet. But I am all ears on the best way to promote our lifestyle and our product, and just any advice along those lines.
So tell me, have you reached out to different ag organizations and said, do you have advice for how to promote our business?
It's more of a conversation that I've had. Mm-hmm. So I'm an insurance agent, and I focus on livestock insurance. Okay. So I spend my spring season traveling to bull sales, offering insurance on the bulls that are purchased. And just having that conversation so far has been the best thing, with other ranchers saying, we do this too, or what do you like to see? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think that's wise. Also, like for the cattlemen's and the stock growers and economic development, the Department of Ag, to reach out to new producers who have just started new businesses and say, how can we help you be more successful? And just making connections is so much of it. Not necessarily, do you need $20,000, which obviously would be wonderful, but sometimes just making the connections to people is what can be life-changing in your success. John, what advice do you have for everybody?
I think growing up, continuing to having a mentor program, I think, not just from a young age, but when we get older even. And if there's like a mentor program within our county or local, even more local than that, I think with having maybe retired, I don't remember the exact percentage, but many farmers are over age 55, so they're going to be retiring soon. And you see a lot of estate retirement sales. What if they were able to give the opportunity, if they were passionate about agriculture and they knew that there's younger people even more passionate about agriculture coming up, if they were able to transition their operations slowly to these new farmers and being able to carry on their legacy of working the ground and growing livestock. And because some of those operations are probably pretty large, and you can't just walk into a bank and they'll just give you a loan to buy it outright. So if they can mentor you and be able to transition that through a slower process and be able to work for them and learn the ropes, I think that would be a great asset to us.
We had, the first couple of years we were farming without my dad, I remember a neighbor, we were combining beans with our 2 combines out in the field, just pulled over, came out and rode with me for a while. And he just got out with me and checked the head, we checked the sieves, we were seeing, if we were shattering beans out on the ground, but just to have an older gentleman stop and spend an hour riding in the combine with me without being asked. And there's so much wisdom that isn't on a website somewhere, that isn't somewhere that you can look it up or Google it. It was just so helpful to have someone from years of experience on that kind of ground, on that kind of conditions, to stop and say, hey, let's spend a little time looking at your combine, let's see how it's going. It really meant a lot, and I think we underestimate how valuable that can be to young producers. Logan.
Yeah, so that's just huge, just having someone there to guide you along the way. I mean, I know people who are in their 50s, 60s that are been ranching their whole life or farming their whole life, and they still turn to people for guidance and ask questions and things like that. They just never stop trying to learn and try to improve their operations. And with being a farmer, being a rancher, I mean, you got to be a vet, you got to be a mechanic, you got to be an agronomist, you got to be all these different things that they have actual just one job that's what person specializes, and you got to kind of almost specialize in all of them. And that's a big thing. And then just like what was already mentioned, having a way to either rent ground or acquire ground to buy or thing like that. I mean, yeah, I don't know many young people that could just go to a land auction around and are able to buy a quarter of land or even 80 of land, in today's market. And even trying to find ground to rent that makes you're able to make work is hard. At least for us, I know, like my family, we rent pretty much every stitch of grass that we graze our cattle on. And we're very fortunate that we've been renting it for 20 plus years, and so they've been very kind to us. But as someone looking to come back to the family operation full time, that's hard, to fully commit yourself to do so when you don't have a lot to back you, I guess. And that's one thing, like, if people want their communities to keep growing, they want their schools to keep getting larger, they want the kids that grew up there to keep returning back, there has to be opportunities for them, whether that's even just jobs in towns or, some guys saying, you were the neighbor kid, you came over and helped, I'll offer, I'd like to give you the chance to rent this piece of ground for so-and-so, or buy it from me for this amount. If you don't want it, that's fine, I'll put it up for auction, but, I'll give you the opportunity first. And I don't know a lot of people that are already established. That's not really how they got their start. Like almost everyone that I've talked to anyway, they were the neighbor kid, or they were the ones whose family bordered this piece of ground or so, whatever, and they got it offered to them first. And just kind of that neighborly thing. And I think there's just kind of almost been a stigma lately in agriculture where bigger is always better, and so you get certain people or whatever that as soon as a piece of ground comes up and they're able to buy it, they keep doing, which who doesn't want to expand their operation? but we can't keep driving young people out of agriculture that way. We have to give us opportunities, and I think that's a big thing.
Taylor, what advice do you have for the industry leaders that are here today?
For advice for us all is just that us as new producers, we're growing up in an age of technology. And you guys as some older producers may not understand the technology that we have. So we are always available and will always be willing to help guide you through the process of technology. While you guys are there for us, we're also there for you to offer you a helping hand whenever you need. Because something that I've noticed in my few short years of being involved in agriculture is that we all have a very strong worth ethic. And I've noticed that with older producers and the next generations coming up is that you always have to be willing to give a guiding hand, and then maybe in the future you will receive a guiding hand.
Perfect. Questions or comments from the audience? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question kind of based on what you said, Logan, about rural communities. I'm wondering if there are things that you guys have talked with your peers about, other than job opportunities, are there other things that your peers are looking for in rural communities if they're looking to go back home or to relocate to a rural community to be a veterinarian or a seed salesman? Are there other amenities or things that are kind of deal breakers for them?
So I know, like, from my small town, one of the biggest things is, just improvements. Like, we just recently did improvements on our high school that was, I think they said it's like 110 years old, and it hadn't had really any improvements done to it until last year. And that, for some people, was kind of, they weren't all for it, which you think people would be, just having a nice school there, having nice playgrounds or things like that for young people to bring their families into. I mean, if your town's getting older or run down or things like that, or things aren't kept up, I mean, there isn't young families or even older families or older people that want to come into that town really and stay. I mean, they want some place where they can raise their kids and grandkids and things like that. And I think we got to take care of our own operations. We got to take care of the ground that we have and things like that. But we also have to take care of our community. And I think we should be obligated, just like we should be obligated to help our neighbors and always lend a friend or a helping hand there. We should always try to help our community where we can too and make sure it's thriving. Because if we don't do that before long, all of our small towns throughout the state and throughout the country, for that matter, will just slowly start dying, and more people will move into the city, and we'll be faced with less
Do you find that
farmers.
with a lot of your peers, that quality of life does matter a lot, what's available in that community? So even if they aren't a farmer, but they're interested in living in a rural area, maybe they would fill one of those other positions, that quality of life does matter, and that keeps them from coming back to our communities?
Okay, I'll go. So yeah, I realize that quality of life is very important. And another thing, going off of based what Logan said, is that you need to find the land to raise your children and your grandchildren. But the land is slowly diminishing due to property development, so everybody has a place to live with the growing population. The population is gonna keep growing no matter how much we try to stop it. It's just, I realize in my town, I live in a small town just west of here. And I bet in 20 or 30 years, Hartford is going to become a suburb of Sioux Falls. So just by realizing that we're losing land that all of these farmers that use for their production is slowly dwindling. It's becoming nothing. It's just when I remember driving to Sioux Falls as a young kid, I remember seeing all these fields of corn and beans. And now when I drove in this morning, it's all houses. There's nothing there for farmers and ranchers to use because it's all gone. It's been used to build properties for people so people can live. So based off of quality of life, yeah, we all need a place to live, but we're slowly diminishing the resources we have to build our own operations.
I think that is extremely important, the quality of life. I'm at a point in my life where a majority of my peers we're married, we're having children, we're growing our families, and so living somewhere that we can not only call home but be comfortable sending our kids to school is extremely important, and knowing that they will have the opportunities to be involved with sports as well as FFA and showing livestock. It's not a you choose sports or you choose ag. And so being in an agricultural friendly community is extremely important to us. And then also to anyone that is involved with agriculture, having a career that is flexible to allow them to do that. I mean, if you're going to be late for work because a cow was calving is a little different than your coworker was late to work because he overslept. So just having an employer that understands what we are doing and that we are hard workers and a community that is agriculturally friendly is important.
Good. Other questions? Comments? That's an awesome question. What's your biggest surprise, good or bad, since you've become involved in agriculture?
I'd say the biggest surprise for me, so I'm assuming pretty much all of us have Facebook or whatever. I think the biggest surprise for me is just how much negativity goes around and how many false claims about agriculture goes around on the web, whether any form of social media. And you know, that's just a huge surprise to me, because people that work their whole life to guarantee a quality of life for them people that have nothing to do with agriculture, may have never even seen a cow or chicken or what have you in a day in their life, yet post things about agriculture that in most cases are completely untrue. And I think that's the biggest surprise, and I think all of us just need to try to do a better job of, you know, showing that, hey, this is how it actually works. You know, we're not just some unsensitive people that, you know, do whatever, don't care for their animals. We put our blood, sweat, and tear into everything we do in agriculture, and I think just trying to show that on social media and get that point across, and, you know, educating people on where their food comes from and how it's actually raised and things like that.
Calli?
I'll kind of spin off of that is the social media aspect of it. Back in high school, I served as the South Dakota Beef Ambassador, and that was when I found a niche that I really wanted to continue telling the beef story. There's so many good cattlemen just in our area that maybe didn't want to be on social media or do a panel like this, and so somebody had to help tell that story. And what surprises me on social media is when something negative happens and people who are beside me doing what I do every day share the negative images and the negative videos. Rather than sharing that photo, I personally think we should put a spin on it and say, yes, somebody saw this, but look at what I did. Look at what my neighbor is doing. And so just how we are addressing the negative issues facing our industry has been a surprise.
John?
One thing that I think has really surprised me is that I don't think any other industry is attacked as much as agriculture, especially production agriculture. And the way that families, consumers, eaters they are so removed from the way that agriculture is produced currently that they don't really grasp what we're doing. And I seen a thing on Facebook, and I guess we're all talking about social media, but farmers work like 400 hours a week to feed people who think we're trying to kill them. And it's sad that that has really come to that. And I think that really surprises me that we became so far removed. And like the lady spoke this morning about how consumers don't always trust farmers, they trust family and friends. And if they have family and friends who talked about it, then they can be influenced more from there. So we need to just spread the good word, I guess, and that's going to have to keep conquering that.
Taylor?
Okay, one thing since I recently joined agriculture that I've noticed that everybody that I meet is that you guys are such hard workers, that normal people would work a 9 to 5 and then go home, eat supper, and then go to bed. But farmers and like ranchers are staying up past the regular 9 to 5 hours and just working and keep continuing to make their operation better for the future and for make sure everything's operating for the next day so they can get a head start on the day tomorrow so when tomorrow comes they're ready. And then another thing that I've realized that's really surprising is that how many people I've met that are really supportive of like what I'm not a traditional agriculturalist, but they still want to hear my story and hear how I can impact this industry that has given us so much.
Good. I think we had a question here somewhere.
Hello, I'm Heather Niederwerder from Hereford, South Dakota, and I just want to say how impressed I am with our youth. You guys get a lot of bad rep of based upon millennials and different things, work ethic and such. But I just want to encourage you, you guys are way further ahead than I was at your age, so keep that momentum and keep your self-development. In our small community, we see volunteerism reducing significantly for the volunteer fire departments, the school boards, and different things. So I just encourage our youth to get involved in that. And I know you're committing a lot of time to a lot of different things, raising families, getting your jobs going, your careers going, your school done, such as that. But I would encourage you to really look at reaching out and spending the time for volunteering. You can be a mentor, and it doesn't have to be to somebody that's younger than you. They can be older too, because you have something to teach also. So I just really encourage you to keep the momentum of your lives, and I'm anxious to see where you'll go for here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think you'd be surprised how many people are watching you and your example, and we're so grateful that you are involved in agriculture, that you're really the face of the future of agriculture. People my age, I feel like, should not be looking at what we do every day for our personal benefit. We should be looking at how will what we do, what policies, what do we talk about, how will it impact agriculture 10 years from now, 15 years from now, to make sure that we're always leading the way. So I appreciate you being willing to be a part of this panel and giving your wisdom and insight, and for the rest of us, I think we've got a specific list of things we need to work on. If we've got a way that we can connect retiring farmers, producers to the next generation and allow them an opportunity to work together to transition to new operations getting started, I think that's a great opportunity. If there's a way to facilitate mentorships, that's definitely needed. And I think there's a benefit that goes both ways. And also, show up. You know, the world still gets changed by the people who show up. So joining organizations, being at meetings, going and being there when decisions are being made are incredibly important. So the fact that you came here today to tell your story, maybe it'll all hit somebody out here in a different way, but there's something here that they've learned that will change maybe their approach to how they run their operation. Maybe they'll go join a commodity organization they know that's working for good policy. Agriculture does get attacked a lot. And as much as I'm not a natural fighter, I don't like to go out there and go back out, but I think it's so important that we're constantly every day getting up and going out and telling our story about what we do, because if we don't, that's when the people that aren't telling the truth about agriculture are getting more and more traction. So we'll all need to double down on making sure that we're constantly focusing on educating folks on that. So thank you so much for being a part of the panel. Why don't we give them a round of applause and thank them for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.